Welcome, everybody, to Inside Boxing Weekly on the Grueling Truth Sports Network. I'm your host, Mike Goodpaster. Right now I want to welcome in my normal co-host, Jeremiah Preisser.
Good evening, everyone. I want to thank all our guests for tuning in once again.
And since you would be my normal co-host, I guess my abnormal co-host from West Virginia would be John Einreinhofer. How you doing tonight, John?
Good to be here, Mike and Jeremiah. Thanks for having me tonight.
All right, we're going to go ahead and look forward to the fights this weekend. Hopefully, they'll be better than what Chavez and Canelo was. But we're going to start off here. We're going to look at Gary Russell Jr. against Oscar Escandone. I'm not sure if that's said right, but in every show for 2 solid years, I've screwed somebody's name up that's foreign, so this will be no different than any others. Gary Russell Jr. was very impressive against Johnny Gonzalez, Patrick Hyland. Of course, he lost to Lomachenko by a majority decision. Escandone, what do you know about him, Jeremiah?
Yeah, well, from what I've seen, he looks like a come-forward guy who, he's not a one-punch knockout artist, but he's an aggressor. From what I've seen, he's a solid fighter. He had a pretty good win in his last outing against Robinson Castellanos, the guy who stopped Gamboa in his last outing. So, he's a good fighter, but he's also, struggled with some lesser guys like Tyson Cave. But to me, he just doesn't have the goods to hang with Gary Russell Jr. here. Russell, for his part, he lost to Lomachenko. Everybody seems to, of course. He just looks like he's tailor-made for Russell Jr., in my opinion. He can't match him with speed. I don't think he has his power. I think he's just in over his head here.
All right. John, your opinion. To me, Escandone just hasn't faced near the quality of competition Russell has. And I don't think he's got much of a shot here. I agree with Jeremiah. What do you think?
Escandone, he has a knockout win over Cuellar earlier in his career. He's got a good win here or there, but to me, he does not quite meet the legit top 10 threshold, which is what I like to look at. I like to, as you both know, throw out the alphabet stuff, try to look at his 8 divisions. Even if you're looking at 17 divisions here, I don't know if Escandone is quite top 10. I think he's 10 in transnational. But Gary Russell's only 5'4", but Escandone is even shorter than him at 5'1.5". I love the way Gary Russell fought against Johnny Gonzalez and Hyland. It seemed like he was what you want to see a guy with boxing skills do to still entertain the fans. Use his skills, but box with power. And I thought he was the epitome of that in those 2 fights. Really, for me, the fight is about, I think Russell now has been off about 14 months. Does he pick up where he left off? And I'm not saying we learned that for certain with Escandone, but he might bring just enough that we see if Russell's going to pick up where he left off, because if Russell picks up where he left off, to me, he's one of the most exciting fighters in the game, the way he's been fighting over the last couple of fights. And featherweight has a lot of good matchups, and a lot of good matchups with guys that are connected to Al Heyman or PBC, which Gary Russell is one of. So Showtime's already said they're going to focus on the featherweight division. The heavyweight division will be two of the division, and they're going to focus also on the welterweight division. So this is one of those 3 divisions that Showtime's going to focus on. I agree with their strategy, and let's hope this leads to some bigger things with a good performance by Russell.
So, John, you kind of gave us the lead in there. Where do you think Russell gets the win here, as we all expect? Where do you think the next step is that Russell will go?
Well, I think that it looks to me about certain that Santa Cruz and Maris, who are both connected with PBC, are going to fight for a second time, which is hard to argue with considering how good their first fight was and how good Maris looked against Cuellar. So I think you're going to get that next. I think Frampton is waiting for sure to see if that's going to happen, because he'd like to get the 3rd crack at Santa Cruz, but I think he's going to have to wait on that, and he knows that. So the question is going to be, who's going to get the winner of Santa Cruz Maris 2? Is it going to be Gary Russell, or is Carl Frampton going to get another shot? I think with with the Showtime featherweight focus, that'll probably be what that comes down to. So I guess we'll be then wondering, is Gary Russell, presuming he wins this weekend, is he going to try to get one more fight in before he targets the winner of Santa Cruz Mares too?
Yeah, so Jeremiah, when you look at Gary Russell, I mean, do you think he is the best fighter in that division, or where do you think he ranks with Santa Cruz, Frampton, guys like that?
Well, I think the proof needs to be in the pudding. I mean, on the surface level, you know, Gary Russell looks like he can possibly beat any one of these guys. But, you know, I'm not convinced until he actually fights one of these guys. I mean, he looks, you know, and he's looked from the get-go like a really talented guy. He's got, you know, maybe the fastest pair of hands in boxing. He's got good power. I mean, he looks like a damn good fighter. But, again, you know, we've all been following boxing for a long time, and looks is one thing, performing is another. So for me, until he actually mixes it up with guys like Santa Cruz, Carl Frampton, Mares, you know, even Quigg, I mean, really, Russell Jr., though he's taken on a guy like Lomachenko and Gonzalez, who is a little long in the tooth, he's just got to mix it up with best in there. I mean, I don't think he's fought, besides Lomachenko, I don't think he's fought a top-rated guy. So, again, I just want to see him mix it up. I mean, it's an intriguing match, you know, between him and Cruz, him and Frampton, and him and a good number of guys. So, again, I just have to wait and see how he performs against these guys, and hopefully they'll make the matches.
All right, we'll go to our next fight. We got Andre Dirrell against Jose Utcztagei. I would sit here and tell you what title belt it's for. I don't really care, because every fight that we talk about will be a title fight. Actually, every fight that's fought in boxing anymore is some kind of a title fight. But Dirrell, coming off a win against Blake Caparello, lost to James DeGale before that. Jose Utcztagei, not quite the experience. He is 26-1 with 22 knockouts. His last win was against Fabio Pena, who's 18-5. Before that, he beat Derek Finley, who's 23-19. Did have a solid win against Julius Jackson, who was undefeated at the time. But probably his most notable fight, Jeremiah, was against Matt Korobov, who actually he put up a decent fight, lost in a unanimous decision in Nebraska. I mean, not too many fights in Nebraska, so you know he was on a Terence Crawford undercard. So what's your take on Utcztagei? Do you think he has any chance against Dirrell here?
I do. I'm not going to say it's a good chance, but this is the thing with the Dirrells, especially Andre. Andre is one of many talented American boxers who just doesn't seem to have the willpower to put it all together. I mean, he's got a lot of natural ability, but he's off so much. I mean, this is just one of many lengthy layoffs that he's had in his career. I mean, this happens time and time again, and I think that there's a possibility. Of course, I'm going to favor Andre Dirrell here. He's a more naturally gifted guy. He's a more experienced guy. He's performed admirably in his most recent outings. However, when a guy, when he's not active, when he, just doesn't seem to take the game too seriously, or, I don't really know what's going on there. There's a possibility that a guy like Utcztagei, who can punch a bit, could knock him off his perch. I mean, I'm confused as to how Dirrell keeps getting these title eliminators in the first place. I mean, it must be the Al Heyman connection. But there's a possibility Utcztagei can knock him off if he goes in there and gets him, just takes it right to him, tries to knock him out. There's a possibility. But, of course, given what I know, I'm going to favor Dirrell here.
All right, so, John, do you think Utcztagei has a shot the way Jeremiah does, or do you think this is a no-brainer?
Yeah, I actually analyzed the fight quite similarly to Jeremiah on this one. Both guys have been off for a while. Utcztagei, Julius Jackson's a big guy who was a puncher, and Utcztagei just blew him out. It was a huge upset, but it was a very impressive the way he blasted him out. He kind of fits the stereotypical prototype of the crude South American puncher. Of course, that's overgeneralizing, but we do see it time and time again. So people who haven't seen him will get an idea. He's got good size. He's a looping type puncher, which Dirrell has the amateur pedigree. He got robbed, I thought, against Carl Frosch. So he's been in some pretty significant fights like that. He fought very well against DeGale after getting dropped a couple of times. But that's where I see what Jeremiah sees. Yeah, Dirrell, he's been around for a while now. And the DeGale fight was a tough fight, too. That was a pretty darn good fight, a pretty tough fight. And he did take some punishment in that fight and really had to dig deep to try to pull it out. He wasn't able to quite do it. But I guess what I'm getting to there is that I won't predict it. I won't go that far because it's not something you can say for sure. But it does, to me, seem like the type of fight where of course, I'm going to pick Dirrell, but I could see where if Dirrell is just starting to get on the other side of the hill and his boxing skills aren't quite what they were. He got caught with DeGale, and he is coming in a little bit more flat-footed in his recent fights, and maybe that allows a wild puncher like Utcztagei to land one of those looping shots. And DeGale hasn't fought particularly great since he fought Dirrell, and he did drop Dirrell twice. And Utcztagei is a better puncher than DeGale. So I think there is a scenario there, as Jeremiah saw, where if maybe DeGale is starting to get on the other side of the hill, he could have a little bit of trouble with this one. But if he's not, if he's the same Dirrell, he's got too much skill for this kind of a fighter.
All right. Next up, we've got the IBF Super Featherweight Championship. We got Gervonta Davis against Liam Walsh. Gervonta Davis, I think he's a Floyd Mayweather fighter, isn't he?
Yeah, he is.
Yeah, he's 17-0, 16 knockouts. He was a guy that, I thought was really impressive, Jeremiah, against Jose Pedraza. And I don't think when you look at Liam Walsh and his record and his career, he's got the home ring advantage. That's about it from what I see here. He hadn't fought the greatest of competition. I think this is kind of Davis goes in and wipes him out. What do you think?
Yeah,
Jeremiah.
I definitely agree. Walsh is a good fighter, but, you look at his resume, there's not much there. And if you've seen him on tape, you don't look at him the same way you look at Gervonta Davis. Davis has a lot of hype. I'm not going to say rightfully so yet. He's yet to fight. Again, he has the one fight over, the Puerto Rican. It was a really good showing. Walsh is a lesser fighter than Davis' last opponent. Yes.
Yeah,
sorry.
Pedraza.
Yes, Pedraza. Thank you.
You're getting to forget everything like I do, Jeremiah. You can't do that. If we're both like that, we're liable to be on here some night and just be really quiet because neither one of us is going to remember what we were going to say.
We're like this guy in this weight class.
That's why we brought John in. We have to have a third person that can remember what we're talking about.
Yeah, he's
we got it all covered.
Yeah, he's got to pay attention to detail. Us, we kind of just
Yeah, we just kind of talk. It's like diarrhea of the mouth.
Exactly. We like the smell of it though, so we just keep going on. Anyway.
That is really sick. Go ahead.
Anyways, Walsh is just not on this kind of level. A lot of these British guys, they got a lot of home backing, and there's always that kind of kick in the butt that they give these guys. You look at guys like Ricky Hatton, even somebody smaller like Josh Warrington, who isn't, he's not a big puncher, but him being in his backyard, again, that sort of hometown feel, it gives you some extra motivation. Unfortunately, no amount of motivation is going to, unless Davis happens to be chinny, which I haven't seen, and Walsh happens to clip him, I just don't see a scenario here in which Walsh wins. I think Davis has a good performance, stops him probably in the mid-rounds.
Yeah, but, John, even the chinny thing, if you look, I think Walsh is 21-0. He's got 14 knockouts. The quality opposition is not that great. So even if he's chinny, I still think it's pushing it to think that even if Davis is chinny, he could lose this fight.
I think that Davis, Walsh is, when I've seen Walsh, he's not a bad fighter, but kind of along the lines like Jeremiah is saying, with all due respect to our British friends, there's a lot of money there now. So you've got American fighters starting going over there to take advantage of that fact. A lot of these British fighters' resumes are not good, in my opinion, especially when they've only fought domestic competition over there. And I just don't see Walsh hanging with Gervonta Davis for long. I thought Pedraza had proved to me he was a pretty good fighter, and Davis just embarrassed him and blew him out.
Yeah, that shocked me. I don't know about you, but
it did.
I think when we did that show, Jeremiah, I think I might even have picked Pedraza, but I'm not sure.
Davis had not fought anybody before that. That's the thing. He had looked good, but he hadn't fought anybody at all.
Yeah, and you think that this is because Floyd Mayweather is running his career. You know, they're going to rush him up there, get him a title fight, and then we'll never see him again.
But I want to say about Davis, because here I am ready to make a prediction. I thought he looked good before Pedraza, and I thought he might get by Pedraza, but he just hadn't fought anybody, so there was a big question mark. But he showed me enough against Pedraza, and I don't think he seems to be a good citizen, so to speak. You know, there's already been a New York Times profile on him. I've seen him popping up on TV quite a bit. He's kind of an interesting young guy, got a good story, and I think we're going to get. I think this is a guy that might be on the way to short-term superstardom, and I don't say it because he's going to do anything wrong, but to me, he's got one of those styles that is based on like a combination of a physical strength with speed and reflexes, not being particularly physically big, that I think he'll be very, very good for the next 3 or 4 years, and then he may be the type of guy, again, not because he does anything out of the ring or something like that, but just because of styles that he flames out. But I'm going to predict we are going to see a comet ride by Gervonta Davis for the next few years, where I would see him fighting his way quickly into, if a big lightweight mix starts to emerge with Mikey Garcia, after he's fought Linares, presumably that type of a thing, that I could see Gervonta Davis getting in there and blowing through some guys in the next 3-4 years. I'm not saying Mikey Garcia, but I think he's primed for a good run here, and I think they're trying to take advantage of the UK market by getting over there, getting a big payday, gaining some respect from the British fans early on, and then really making him a global type name.
All right, so if he gets this win, where would you like to see him go?
I personally would like to see him get right. I'd like to see him get right up into that lightweight mix. I'm not saying he's automatically going to be ready for Mikey Garcia, but then let's see how good he performs. And Showtime and PBC have Mikey Garcia now. I think Mikey Garcia will beat Linares if they fought in the meantime. So, hey, if Gervonta Davis does have, and I did mention this to Jeremiah, I believe, very early on when we were watching him together, talking on Facebook in an early PBC card, a little bit of attributes like a mini Tyson. And, I think I see him, he's already got that high KO percentage. I see that continuing, and I just think that maybe it doesn't seem like it today, but maybe in a very short period of time, we might start wanting to see him fight Mikey Garcia, and maybe that's something that doesn't seem like we would be looking at now, but maybe, say, a year from now, maybe that's something that the fans are going to want, and that could be a big fight for Showtime and Heyman.
Yeah, definitely agree there. Let's go. We'll go to the main event. We'll start off with Jeremiah here. After we do a little introduction for the fight, we got Terence Crawford, one of the best pound-for-pound boxers in the world, 30-0, 21 knockouts, WBC and WBO World Super Lightweight Champion. Will defend his title against Felix Diaz, who's 19-1. Crawford has been impressive. I mean, he dominated John Molina, took care of Victor Postol, Henry Lundy, who we've had on the show before. I mean, Ray Beltran, Yuriorkis Gamboa, Ricky Burns. I mean, he's run the gamut. He's beaten all comers so far, still at a very young age. Jeremiah, we look at Felix Diaz, who's 19-1, 9 knockouts, so probably the shot that maybe he could catch him with one on the chin and take him out of there. If you look at him, the fight that would give you some hope would be maybe the Lamont Peterson fight, which was a majority decision, but that was also a couple years ago. He also beat Adrian Granados, which is a good win, won a majority decision over him. But from seeing that fight, I don't think he beat Granados. I think he got the decision. But what's your take on Diaz and his chances of upsetting Terence Crawford?
Well, I mean, I don't see the only person I see beating Crawford is probably no one, even at 147. I mean, Crawford at 140, I think he's just kind of wasting his time. I mean, there's not really a bunch of killers up there right now. And I don't particularly care for the division itself. So until he moves up to 147, I don't see anybody beating him. But I will say that I do think Felix Diaz is Crawford's best opponent since Postal. I mean,
I think this, Jeremiah. I think Diaz fighting almost anybody else at that weight. I give him a shot to beat anybody. I just think there's a huge difference between Crawford and Diaz and Crawford and everybody else in that division.
I do, but Diaz did arguably beat Peterson. He did. A lot of people that I know do think he beat Peterson. So I think he's with the way Peterson looked and the way he's looked against some of the best guys there, like Garcia, for instance. I mean, Peterson is potentially a top 5, top 10 welterweight. So Diaz is definitely a good fighter. I definitely think he's got the skill to hang with Crawford, but I think it's going to be like most of his fights. I think what's going to happen is Diaz is going to box well, kind of like Hank Lemney did in the early going, and then Crawford is going to figure him out and start to put the finishing touches on him in the later rounds. But I do think, again, that it's going to be a good fight, and I'm pretty excited to see this one, actually.
Yeah, I think it's solid for 3 or 4 rounds, and then I think that Crawford takes over and dominates the fight. What do you think, John?
I agree with Jeremiah in the analysis that I think it's very close to what I would consider a legitimate top 10 fight in terms of, if Crawford, even if you're ranking 147 pounders, to me he has to be in the top 4. If you're ranking him at that weight in terms of who he would actually beat, and he might even beat some of the guys above him. But so at 140, then he's even more dominant. There's not as many people there. Diaz has already fought at welterweight. He beat at 147. Diaz beat Sammy Vasquez. The win's not looking quite as good as it initially did after what Colasso did to Vasquez. But I thought Diaz fought extremely well against Peterson. I did think Peterson just barely edged him out, even though I thought Diaz fought great. The problem with a guy like, and Diaz has the amateur pedigree, he's an Olympian. The problem for a guy like Diaz, to me, that I think is going to be very problematic for him in this fight is that he's a guy that, even though he's got a lot of boxing skill, he does come forward some in a skilled way, but he does come forward some. But he is not a puncher, and he's not particularly physically big for the division, 140 or even 147. Terence Crawford has a lanky type strength. If you watch his fights, even though he's got a lot of boxing skill, and he easily projects at 147 to me. I think, as Jeremiah said, he already should be there, in my opinion. I just don't think it's, in that sense, it's a good style matchup for Diaz. I think that Crawford's going to be hitting Diaz as he tries to move forward some, even though Diaz is skilled, and Diaz doesn't have the physical size. I can see Crawford wearing on Diaz pretty quickly in this one, and I got a feeling Diaz is not going to make it the distance. He's a huge underdog on the books, more than you would even think for his skill level, because I think even if you're just ranking 8 divisions at the welters, Diaz is close to top 10. He's on the fringe. So it's kind of funny. In that sense, I can't say that Crawford's, fighting a bum or a guy who's not a good fighter or anything like that. But as we're all kind of getting around. It's just I get on Top Rank a lot, as you guys know, and they just don't seem to me to be able to provide the fights. In other words, even though this is just about a top 10 matchup, you think that they would be, you know, we already had to go through Crawford, Molina, and Crawford, Lundy, and you think that even though he did fight Postol, you think that they would get some better matchups for this guy, but they just don't.
All right, so when this fight's over with, we assume Crawford wins. Who is the fight you would most like to see him against, John? Any weight division, what is the fight out there that would really make you sit up and take notice?
Yeah, here's what if boxing was operating the way it should, that within, let's say, the next year you could ideally have, but because of promotional and TV, and really in the U.S., even beyond promotional problems, it's the exclusive TV deals that stop the fights. But what you'd ideally like to see, I think, for fans of the sport, which we're close to but we probably won't get, is you've got next week, you've got Kell Brook fighting Errol Spence. If the winner of that fight fights Keith Thurman, you've got that trumps Pacquiao fighting Horn. He's made that choice. He's taking himself out of it, in my opinion. So you would have Thurman fighting the winner of Brook Spence. That gives you a linear welterweight champ. To me, then, Terence Crawford moving up to fight whoever would win Thurman against the Brook Spence winner would be a huge.
Well, how about this? How about we move him up and have him fight Lamont Peterson, and the winner of that fight fights who's ever left on the other side?
Yeah, I don't think Lamont Peterson is powerful enough to deal with Terence Crawford. That's the type of thing.
I don't know that any of them are, except for Earl Spence. I think Earl Spence can deal with anybody. I think Earl Spence is the best fighter out of all those guys.
I think he probably will be too, but we're going to find out next week if we're right or not. But I think that's the problem is Arum knows that for him personally, the best move is for Crawford to fight Pacquiao. And Pacquiao's, in your top two at welterweight at the moment, but Pacquiao just kind of understandably doesn't want to take that fight. He doesn't want to take that kind of pounding when he can get easy paydays for Jeff Horn. Everybody's going to favor Crawford over Pacquiao at this point. Bob Arum would love to have the torch pass. So, if you wanted that to be the HBO top-ranked side of the welterweight bracket, so to speak, which is what we're dealing with in boxing nowadays, that would be perfect. The reason I didn't mention that fight, because I know Arum does want that fight and Top Rank does, but Pacquiao and Roach don't want it. And I can actually almost see that from a business perspective and for Pacquiao's health perspective. So you're not going to get it. But in a perfect world, sure. I mean, Arum could put Crawford and Pacquiao together tomorrow if Pacquiao would go for it. And that would be a good fight at 147 for one of the top three spots to, face off against who's ever going to come out of the PBC bracket, so to speak, and Showtime bracket, and you could have a great fight. But I'm just already assuming that the time has passed when there's any chance of getting Crawford and Pacquiao. So there's nobody on that top-ranked HBO side of the bracket for Crawford to fight, and this is where boxing gets into problems, because if he can't fight Pacquiao at 147, and who can he fight on HBO at 147?
Yeah, who does he fight? Jesse Vargas or?
Right, that's right. Good point, Jeremiah. Jesse Vargas would probably be the most, or Timothy Bradley. He could fight Timothy Bradley. Okay, let me say that.
Wouldn't be
terrible.
Maybe
that happens. Maybe that does happen. That's not terrible. And maybe I'm being a little too pessimistic because, people criticize Al Heyman, but in terms of getting his guys paydays, I mean, Diaz is one of his guys. So you can't say that he crosses his guys over, except for Jacobs, guys that he doesn't perceive as A-side caliber guys. Not that Jacobs was A-side against Golovkin, but the point being one of PBC's more star potential guys. He sends them over and has them get a payday when the HBO side is short on opponents. So I guess maybe if you look at that scenario, maybe it's not impossible if Sean Porter fights a Crawford. That would be interesting. Maybe if you want to be an optimist, maybe.
Yeah, I would like to see that fight because Porter's pretty damn good.
Yeah, maybe Heyman would be willing to send Porter over to HBO to fight Crawford. I don't know, but Top Rank just does not have enough guys. Like, I guess Bradley, they should maybe think about doing Bradley or Vargas, as Jeremiah said. They would be available on the HBO Top Rank side of things. And that would be interesting welterweight fights for Crawford. I'm not saying I wouldn't be interested in those either. Those wouldn't be bad. Of course, Bradley would be better than Vargas, but something like that, and then trying to bang the drum to have them fight whoever comes out of Thurman, Brook, and Spence. That's what all the fans would like to see, I think, and get a real, true linear welterweight champ.
All right, Jeremiah, what do you got in your jab bag this week?
Well, I mean, I'm just going to mention it since it seems to be the hot story right now. It seems like Miguel the Diva Cotto is parting ways with Jay-Z's Rock Nation. Apparently, he priced himself out of a Kama Guy fight. They're supposed to pay him about $10 million for that fight. I don't know where Cotto goes from here. Maybe he goes back to Top Rank, a more stable promotional company, one that obviously has a bit more experience in the business. I'm not exactly sure, but I think they probably could have gotten an opponent in time and made the date for July, and everything would have been fine. I'm not exactly sure what's going on here.
All right. Anything else?
Anything else?
Because you're missing a big thing. Because Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. knows what it's like to buy a pay-per-view fight now where he's fighting Canelo Alvarez, because he got robbed of $3 million after the fight, where everybody that watched that fight on pay-per-view got robbed of about $64.99.
You said he got some karma, you're saying.
Yeah, he got some karma. I mean, he knows how everybody else got robbed now. And if 1 million people got robbed of $65, that's more than him getting robbed of $3 million, so he ought to just call it even and get the hell away from karma.
Yeah, I don't think
the robbery story does sound strange under the circumstances, but we'll let the police.
Yeah, I've never even read it. I just saw the highlight and I thought it was funny. So I could really care less what somebody who, I don't know. I mean, to me, I've always known he was overrated, but I didn't know that he would become an embarrassment. You look Canelo Triple G. I know everybody's talked about venues. I've seen 3 or 4 different sites today projecting right now that the front runner, Jeremiah, is Dodger Stadium.
I think that would be. I think that'd be excellent. I mean, I would love to see that.
We've seen fights at Yankee Stadium. Ollie Norton 3. And I can't believe I'm saying this because it's the last one that pops into my head. But after I say Ollie Norton 3, I probably should not say Miguel Cotto and Yuri Foreman. But go ahead, Jeremiah.
Let's forget that. Let's forget that one.
Yeah, that's like talking about like a supermodel and then bringing up Roseanne Barr. But go ahead.
We all have our preferences, but I think Dodgers Stadium is I think that would be an excellent choice. I mean, my thinking personally was I did not want to see this fight take place in a casino. They price gouge guys, and I understand it's good for the promoters and the fighters' checkbooks. It fattens their wallet a bit. But as a fan, I didn't want to see that, especially coming off the heels of Vladimir Klitschko and Anthony Joshua. They threw it in a big stadium. Lots of people showed up. It made for an incredible atmosphere, and I was hoping that with the Golovkin and Canelo situation that they would try and follow that. You know what I mean? They would try to follow that model. And I think, my initial thoughts were, it might go to AT&T Stadium where the Dallas Cowboys play, and that would be awesome. It's got that.
But I think Dodger Stadium is even better because you've got a history at Dodger Stadium.
I think
maybe not a boxing, but you have I mean, the L.A. area, you've got huge fight history, especially like the Olympic Auditorium, even the old Forum. Not much of it, but Dodger Stadium is Dodger Stadium. There's a lot of history there. It's been around since early to mid-'60s. I think that makes that a better site than what Jerry Jones is half taxpayer financed stadium.
Well, and I real quick, John, I'll let you go, but I would say not only because of the things that you said, but also because Golovkin lives in Southern California. Canelo Alvarez obviously has a big Mexican fan base. They both do. So I think because Golovkin, trains in California and has fought in California, I think that's a better site than Texas. What do you think, John?
I like the Dodger Stadium idea, and I'd like the Cowboy Stadium, AT&T as well. But I think it would be better for boxing. I'm in total agreement there. But my head is telling me that MGM, it's just worth too much to them to have it in Vegas. I mean, MGM owns, of course, MGM Grand, Mandalay Bay. They own most of the big casino hotels in town, and when you start thinking of all the customers that brings in for them, they sell the fight closed circuit in the other casinos once the arena sells out, all the gambling money, the money bet on the fight, the increased hotel prices on the weekend of the fight. It's just worth so much money to them, a fight of this magnitude, which this is. Certainly it's the best matchup we have, at least in terms of anticipation, since Mayweather-Pacquiao. That's only 2 years ago, but that was not a good fight, as we all know. And we knew they were older going in. I mean, this is the first fight we've had for a while where you have two guys that we want to see. We have the significance, and we anticipate it's going to be an exciting fight. I'm with you guys. I'd love to see it. And Dodger Stadium's a good, unique idea. I love that idea. I think it would sell well there and be good, and AT&T be a good spectacle. But my head's telling me that they just cannot outbid Vegas for this fight.
All right, guys, we're going to go ahead and wrap up Boxing Weekly show. John, do you have any final words?
Yeah, maybe maybe I shouldn't bring it up, but I think I feel almost obligated since we're getting news from credible sources today.
Don't be bringing up no Conor McGregor, Floyd Mayweather.
I'm bringing it. I got to say it. The U.S.
It's stupid.
There's new reporting on it though. Again, from credible sources that the UFC side of the deal is done, which is apparently, which I think is much more important than people realize, because Dana White has a contract with these guys that they cannot box. He has to allow it. So that's worked out, but apparently there's a holdup where on the boxing side, with Mayweather's side, that they're not looking necessarily to give McGregor and the UFC the kind of the split that they need to make it work for them. So that's where there could be a potential holdup for this thing. Not that any of us are holding our breath in that sense. But
see, John, if you're going to come on the show, there's no talk unless it's about boxing.
Right. Well, McGregor's a boxer.
This is not about boxing. This is stupid. It's a circus. It's a sideshow. It's even worse to me than when Inoki fought Ali. I mean, it's a joke. It's a slap in the face to anybody that's a professional boxer. I mean, the UFC, they'll want to do it because UFC, I mean, who the hell cares about the UFC? I mean, there's not a UFC fight that has been done that would get the mainstream interest that past boxing matches have. Unfortunately, there's not too many boxing matches that do anymore either. But I think this can only be bad for boxing. And with the UFC, they take a shot in the dark, maybe accidentally hits Mayweather and knocks him out. But I've seen McGregor fight against low-level opposition on, sparring. And this is stupid. I mean,
I hated it like everybody else at first, but I think I see a bit of an opportunity for boxing the more I've thought about this. It'd be a disaster for boxing if Mayweather lost, but if they have this and it gets viewed by 4, 5, 6 million people even on pay-per-view, which is certainly realistic for this, and Mayweather embarrasses him and even maybe not if he could knock him out, at least boxing would get a lot of viewership even in that kind of a spectacle, and we all know we're having a good year right now with Golovkin.
Yeah, but John, I think
Alvarez,
I think when you look at Canelo and Chavez, when you look at Mayweather and Pacquiao, you can only burn people's ass on $60 to $100 so many times before they just stop buying it.
Well, I agree with you. I'm not saying it'll be a good fight, or actually what happens in the ring would be particularly entertaining, but the spectacle will be big. And as a boxing fan, what could get you slightly into it, whether you love Mayweather or hate him, is as a boxing fan, as you said, when you're watching that fight, if you're streaming it on Facebook or whatever, or if for some reason somebody chooses to pay, and you're a boxing fan, you don't want to see Mayweather get caught with something and lose that fight, because if a UFC guy beats a boxer in a ring, that's certainly not going to be very good for boxing's future, even though it's a one-time event. So what I'm saying is there will be an odd sort of a suspense there if you're a boxing fan, if the thing actually does come off.
Yeah, but if Mayweather really wants to go out and fight him, I think Mayweather knocks him out inside a minute and a half.
I would like to,
because I don't think McGregor will be able to defend himself.
I think that that's very possible. Will Mayweather do it or not, or will he be cautious? I would think he could take him right out, and I'd like to see that, and I think that would be oddly good for boxing. But
see, I don't think that would be good for boxing. I think we're getting too many pay-per-views that are built up to be something, and then we get nothing. I mean, Mayweather-Pacquiao, you had, 3 or 4 million people pay $100. And I don't think it's any coincidence that since then, I think the only pay-per-view fight that did a million buys was Canelo and Chavez. And I think that's a fight that if Mayweather and Pacquiao never happens, may do even more than that.
Same with Alvarez and Cotto, I think.
Yeah, I don't think that you've seen the pay-per-view numbers that you saw in the past, John, since Mayweather and Pacquiao. And I think that Chavez and Canelo may even hurt it more. And I think right now, the thing that saves boxing and makes this a great year is if Triple G and Canelo get down, they get in an actual fight, people get their money's worth. And I don't think that boxing is going to be helped if right after that you've got Floyd Mayweather and his circus against Conor McGregor in his circus. I just don't see how that works out good for boxing no matter what. I see how it works out for UFC no matter what happens, because then UFC's put on the same scale as boxing.
Well, not enough in the U.S., and I focus. Well, although really, to tell you the truth, when you start looking at the European numbers on TV, they're not as great as the Europeans think they are when you even compare the comparable ratings to the U.S. What I'm just saying is, I'm concerned that not enough people see boxing on TV anymore, whether it be pay-per-view, broadcast TV, premium cable, and I think we're at a point. We've been at a point for a very long time that anything that garners some attention and gets viewers in the millions, there just needs to be some events to try to get some momentum going. Because even when you have a great fight now, I mean, if 500,000 people see it, that in the United States with the population, that's just not enough to move the needle.
Well,
before we wrap it up, me and John have hogged like the last 10 minutes, Jeremiah. What's your opinion?
No, I was just going to say, I do see John's angle here in the sense that, really,
I see it too. People, I just don't agree with it.
I think most people who would pay for this fight anyways are UFC fans. I mean, when I go to, when I patrol the groups and whatnot, most boxing fans think it's a joke. I mean, it's a complete mismatch. I mean, it would be the same way if Floyd went into a cage. But when I look at some of the UFC fans and whatnot, they seem to be the most intrigued by this. So what I think, again, I'm just kind of piggybacking off what John said, even though I think it's a complete sham of a fight and a mismatch, but it allows for that exposure. And I think UFC fans, you're bringing in a bunch of potential converts. I mean, what you'll have is the discrepancy in one pure art form compared to somebody who's a part-time practitioner and happens to be good in his sport. So you know what I mean? I think there will be a lot of people, they look at the mismatch and they're like, oh, okay, boxing can be a beautiful thing because, Mayweather, yeah, he's not the most exciting stylist, but, he is very good at what he does, and people, recognize that. They'll say, hey, it is an art form. There is something to be respected there, and you will bring in potential converts. And like some people say, like the adage goes, any attention's good attention. But again, it's still a mismatch. It's still stupid. But if they put it together, please put it on after Golovkin and Alvarez, please.
Well, and my thing about it is this. I just think it's bad for boxing because out of everything that could happen, there's not too much positive that could happen in the ring with it. Because unless he goes and blasts him in a minute, which with Mayweather, He's allowed to just dance around and show off for 7 or 8, 9, even all 12 rounds and just get the win, which we've seen him do before when he obviously could have got rid of somebody. But my concern is this. It's going to be, 2 years since Mayweather's fought? He's got to be 40, right around 40 years old. You never know when you got nothing left. So my concern here is this. Conor McGregor against Floyd Mayweather in his prime is an absolute joke. But what if Floyd Mayweather's no longer in his prime?
In that sense, it's got a bit of a Holmes Butterbean quality to it.
Oh no, because Larry Holmes at the age of 127 would beat Butterbean in his prime.
but
Larry
Holmes had that bit of a risk.
Beat Butterbean's ass.
But Holmes was 53, so it's just that thing where I was, of course, in that fight for the same types of reasons we're talking about, even though it was
how about that fight just because I wanted to watch Butterbean get smacked around like by an old guy?
I mean, I wanted, of course, Larry Holmes to get that win there and make sure that the Butterbean's trade got stopped once and for all. But you know,
Butterbean had a train. Butterbean, I don't know. I remember when that was Marcus Rhodes, who was like 1-14, knocked him out at Madison Square Garden.
Mitchell Rose.
There we go.
Ex-New York Golden Gloves guy. Yeah, he got a losing record.
Yeah, but didn't he have like a terrible record?
Yeah,
but they forgot about the Golden Gloves thing, which means he could throw a straight punch, which made him better than everybody else. Butterbean beat.
Exactly. He had a losing record, but he knocked out Butterbean.
Yeah. But all right, guys, we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. I know John's got to go. John, thanks for coming on tonight, helping us out with the show.
Well, thanks for having me, guys. Great fun as always.
All right, Jeremiah, any quick final words?
I want to wish John good luck tomorrow. Go get him. But, no real final words. I just want to say, again, thanks for John and happy to be on the show. And I'm just hoping the weekend turns out some good fights. To be honest with you, a number of them do look like mismatches, but I'm hoping some of them give us a little action. Hopefully there's some redeeming quality there.
All right, guys, make sure you check out our sponsors, replenishingtechnologies.inc.com. GridironMo.com, of course, as always, they've been a sponsor with us since almost the inception of the show. If you love boxing, we interviewed last week Ruben Castillo on our Boxing Legends show. Just earlier today, we interviewed Livingstone Bramble. That show will be up sometime in the next 24 hours. So make sure you go to thegruelingtruth.net and check that out. Make sure you listen to all our shows on iHeartRadio, iTunes, Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn. Anywhere you find podcasts, boxing or sports podcasts, you'll find The Grueling Truth. So for John Einreinhofer, Jeremiah Preisser, I'm Mike Goodpaster. You've been listening to The Grueling Truth, where the legends speak.